Welcome, everyone. I'm your host, Yuli Cherepalli, the founder and president of InnovatorMD. We have an exciting program today, and thank you for joining us. This is our monthly meetup. We do that every month on the third Thursday of the month. It is very exciting to have this program today because we have some very special guests, as you will see, that this is a very important topic that many of you have seen and also experienced some of it at the conference at our last InnovatorMD World Congress, where Debby and her team came and presented. So this is a very important topic, and I'm very excited. Okay, so let's kick off this session. I'm going to introduce our Master of Ceremonies today, is Don Lovy. Dan Lovy. He's an executive co-director of HealthGrid Alliance. He's a seasoned digital media entrepreneur with a lot of experience. He had an opportunity to code, design, invent, and market a range of digital media products. He built games in assembly language, created a compiler and language tools for game designers, founded a number of companies building hardware and stretching his wings into marketing, sales, and business development. Welcome, Dan.
Well,
the stage is yours.
Thank you, Willie. Yes, I'm Dan Lovy. I'm the co-executive director of the HealthGrid Alliance. I am based in Boston, and so I'm responsible for everything east of the Mississippi. As Yuli said, there's began life as a coder, and now been focusing the last few years on how do we get people and constituents to work together to do larger things, to build more interesting things and make, execute change. So I thought I'd start with some introductions from our panelists. Warren, want to give an introduction?
Hi, I'm Warren Wexelman. I'm a cardiologist for the last 40 years here in New York City, in Brooklyn specifically. I was the founder and director of the first academic cardiac rehabilitation program in New York back in 1984 at Maimonides Medical Center. I went on to run pharmacy and therapeutics for 23 years and was the associate chief medical officer of the hospital for a while. I'm involved and on the faculty at NYU Medical Center in New York, as well as in Maimonides here in Brooklyn. And I have started a company recently called AlphaMed, which does sensor-based applications in healthcare, designed to really reinvent healthcare and make it patient-centric. So we're very much involved in that. We have a tremendous number of applications that started out in the beginning of COVID, actually. But I've been writing software and electronic healthcare records for, 35, 40 years. Outside of that, I practice medicine, take care of patients, and have a concept of everything.
Right. Thanks, Warren. And Roger Sanford.
Oh, thanks, Dan. Yeah, Roger Sanford out here in Silicon Valley. I'm the CEO and founder of Hcare Health. It's a public benefit corporation that we started just about a year ago. And I think one of the things we're addressing is the fact that a lot of wonderful solutions are out there, and they tend to be siloed and vertical. And so what we're creating is a horizontal platform that's both AI powered and blockchain powered. And I'm happy to get more into detail later, but it's an honor to be here. And I think you'll find that as panelists, we all are kind of in wild agreement about the quantum possibilities existing in healthcare. And not that we're all trying to ride to the rescue, but there are so many people in the world right now that are really critically concerned about what's going to happen next with the global aging population and the burnouts that are happening in healthcare. And I'm just really honored to be with this group.
Thanks, Roger. Aman.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for having me, and thanks to all right. Hey, thanks everyone for having me here, and especially to InnovatorMD. And good to be back amongst friends. So I'm Aman Johar, based here in the Silicon Valley as well. And I'm the founder of the NFT Brewery. We are creating easy solutions for mass adoption of the blockchain technology. Been in the Silicon Valley about 13 years now, and the first half of it was spent investing in distressed asset companies. And that's when I did my first healthcare company called Applied Protein, where we were really creating drugs for the side effects of cancer therapy, especially oral and GI mucositis. In the last 6 years, I've spent mostly on the blockchain technology side of things. And thanks to COVID, I got back into talking a little bit more about the healthcare space. And that's what brought me together with HealthGrid Alliance as well, and Dan and Debby. And definitely looking forward to a lot of the innovative elements that are going on in this space and connecting the dots between healthcare, blockchain, and the rest of the tech world. Glad to be here.
Thanks, Aman. And Pavan.
Thanks, Dan. It's a pleasure to join all of you. I mean, unlike the guys who spoke before me, I'm from the East Coast side. And I think me and Dr. Warren are from the same side of the country. I'm an ex-founder. I come with a tech background, spent 3 decades in corporate world in different roles, turned into an investor since 2014, funded a few companies, had a couple of exits, and my passion is innovation, change, and disruption. And healthcare is also a great space that needs a lot of change. And I think we'll talk a lot more about it as we progress today. Thank you.
Thanks, Pavan. So let me turn things over to Debby, who's responsible for everything west of the Mississippi, for an introduction about both her and a little bit about the HealthGrid Alliance. Debby?
Thanks, Dan. Thanks, Uli, for inviting us to do this. And thanks to my fellow panelists who have been supporting HealthGrid Alliance and what we've been trying to do since the beginning of COVID. So we were formed to try to bring the power of new technologies to COVID response. And that has evolved since then into trying to bring technology in general to critical problems in the medical space. And the problem that we're looking at right now is, of course, how can blockchain help make healthcare work better for providers, patients, and everybody else involved? And I have the honor to give you just a brief idea of what we mean when we say Health3. There's a longer version of this talk available on the InnovatorMD site from the recent World Congress. But just to summarize and remind you, Web3 is distributed control of your data. So when the web started, it was just all about sharing information. It was really the publishers who got most of the benefit out of that. And then Web 2, which is where we are now, is all about the platforms. Google's platform, Amazon's platform, Facebook's platform, and they've done an amazing job of bringing services and social interaction to people around the world. And they've made an amazing amount of money doing it by collecting an amazing amount of data that we mostly somewhat sort of pretty much share with them. But it looks like that's all about to change, so that people will have much more ownership over their data and how it gets used, and in particular, who gets to monetize it. So, you know, in some sense, it would be nice if we all got a share of all of the profits that Facebook and Google get from making use of our data and selling it to advertisers. And the mechanism for doing that is going to be blockchain, unlike Web 2, which was client servers, and Web 1, which was basically just simple websites. So there's an analogy for that when it comes to the health area. So originally, doctors worked in silos, their own offices, mostly paper records, and they were self-sufficient. And now we're at a stage where there's incredible institutional support, large reams of data, electronic health records, and a certain amount of transparency and access to data for patients. but there's a big trend towards giving patients more data. Some of this is being promulgated through regulation, both in the US and around the world, and also by the desire of patients to better understand what their medical data is, and they'd like to be able to provide access as they need to, and doctors would like to be able to share data more easily, and not be so dependent on these big institutions, which sometimes have their own agenda. So that's where we're heading with Health3. And HGA's role in this is to create alliances that help make the benefits of this change be equally shared by the stakeholders involved, and not just on the part of the big companies. I don't want to go through all of these details. As I said, they're available in a longer talk. But take a quick look at this, and it forms the basis for bringing together the people that you see here and the people that aren't here, but that we would like to see here and are bringing into our organization. So there's people who are interested in providing better care. This is a very high level, very hand wavy kind of analysis, but I think it's still helpful to think about it this way. So of course, providers, and you'll hear more about that, I'm sure, from Warren. People who advocate for patients and patients who advocate for themselves, of course. People who are concerned about privacy. Big medical institutions, well, arguably they could be on both sides, but I had to pick one, and so on. And on the better value side, I dump the technology people into there, but they're also the insurers, the investors, big tech, people who want to be able to make more money on this. And of course, they've got to provide better value to do that. And if we get all those people around the table, then hopefully we can get the benefits of distributed control, one of the main features of Health3, to apply to all of them. So that will require rethinking the whole information model. As we know, there's already quite a bit of rethinking of the business models behind delivering healthcare now, and the opportunity to reshape the ecosystem. So help us determine the future of Health3. And if you go to our website, you can sign up for our mailing list, and you can also see an invitation to join our second working group meeting, where we're trying to get a better sense of how to go about this and who can support us in making this happen. Thank you, Dan.
Thank you, Debbie. So to start off, why don't we start with Warren, and maybe as a practitioner, can you talk a little bit about what you're seeing are the greatest patient information needs, and how a blockchain Health3 approach can help address that?
Sure, Dan. So I have the unique concept of being on so many sides of this, but I'd like to go back to when I was a child. All right, that always works, especially in psychiatry. I'm going to go back when I was a child. I was promised two things by the year 1990. I was promised flying cars, which sort of never happened, and a cure for cancer. Everybody told me by the 1990s, we'll have a cure for cancer. So I'm still waiting for it. Although we've made some great strides in cancer, I'm still waiting for my flying car, especially as I go on traffic in the LIE, which you can understand, the Long Island Expressway. What is that? Why do I say that? Because here we are talking about H3, Web3, a blockchain, and the concept and the promise, again, of what the computer was going to bring to healthcare and medicine. And we're all waiting for that. It has been probably one of the biggest travesties of anything in the healthcare industry. Healthcare is completely damaged. It hasn't gotten better. Maybe access is a little more open, and that's great. All right. But the concept of technology aiding in the individual's care is so askew because what we've considered to be technology is the concept of an electronic healthcare record, which when you think about it, it is a bogged down, bloated, heavy-weighted concept that ties up individuals, that creates a huge amount of problems for the users and doesn't give the patient any more information. Your information, the information right now about every patient is in pretty much everybody else's hands except the patient. If the patient wants the information, they have to go through the same hoops and rigors that they did 25 and 30 years ago. Although, yes, there are portals. Some of you will tell me you create in your applications portals for patients to use, but the information is indistinguishable and not understandable to the average individual. And what happens is that stuff sometimes gets up there before I've even had a chance to look at it myself. And I get phone calls about this. But if you look at it from the patient, from the practitioner side, which is where you sort of wanted me to comment it, nothing has created more havoc, more depression, and more of an exit from healthcare than the so-called automation of healthcare today, which is the electronic healthcare record. It's done nothing. The only thing that the electronic healthcare record has really done for anybody is by creating a large fund of information for each patient that can be copied from one visit to the next. It improves billing. It certainly does improve billing. But as far as revolutionizing healthcare, it really hasn't. And it's unfortunately taken some of the best practitioners of healthcare and forced them to really just say, I've had enough, there's no more. There's never been a larger level of depression amongst healthcare providers in the last 50 years. You know, we thought back in 1965, even though I was quite young at the time, and thank you for remarking about how great I look for my age. That's wonderful. But at the end of the day, in 1965, physicians were walking around lighting memory candles in churches and synagogues all over the United States because of something called Medicare. It was going to start, you know, socialized healthcare. Everybody thought their lives were going to end, and it didn't. Actually, it was the biggest boom to the healthcare industry and payment that there ever was. But if we look about the promise of technology, so the promise of Web 1, yes, certainly information was available. Web 2, yes, you have these areas where certainly there's going to be, there's a tremendous amount of growth. But as far as actual patient information about the ability for you to go in the same healthcare system, walk in, see a different doctor, and not have them have the same questions asked. If you go today into any large health center, you're going to be asked to fill out the same paperwork that you did on the first floor when you're on the third floor, sometimes another room on the third floor. The system is entirely dysfunctional. It needs to be changed. We're not going to make strides. You know, cancer, many of you have spoken about cancer. Cancer has done in leaps and bounds. Cancer has become a chronic illness now instead of a death sentence for so much of the population. Imagine what we could do and how much faster we could do it if we really could get patient health information to where it needs to go quickly and with less pain, and where everybody has time to actually talk about the disease and the treatment and the process, as opposed to entering the same damn information everywhere we go.
So Warren, if you had to list one, maybe two top things that you would do were you to wave your magic wand or stethoscope, what would that be?
Well, let's look at it very simply. Number one, let's make technology in healthcare patient-centric as opposed to system-centric or insurance company-centric or large platform-centric. The patient has to be the one that everything revolves around, and they're not now, and they haven't been. The patient needs to own their data, not for any other reason, not even for monetary value. Because when somebody comes to me, bang, send me that information, let me have it all. And then when I'll add to it, and then the next practitioner, bang, give it to them. That's the one thing we have to remember who we're here to serve. We're not here to serve Google Docs. We're not here to serve Aetna and US Healthcare and Blue Cross Blue Shield or the largest healthcare system, Kaiser. We're here to serve the patient, your neighbors, your family, the people that are sitting next to you right now. That's who we've lost track of. And until we start balancing everything around the patient, we're going nowhere in healthcare. We're still in the dark ages.
Roger, as maybe that's a good lead in for, as you are on the, leading a charge at a startup, I'm curious to hear how the world has been responding to what you've been doing, and in particular, your use of some of these information technology aspects.
Well, thanks, Dan. And first of all, I couldn't agree more with the Honorable Dr. Wexelman, who I have a tremendous amount of regard and respect for. We only differ on one small item. We don't talk about patient-centric care. We talk about person-centric care. And our differential is this. The minute you start using the word patient, no offense, doc, because I know this has been the way it's been forever, but you start to put distance between the clinician and the person receiving the care. And it's really critical for us all to realize we're all humans, right? I mean, Hcare is about that. And the blockchain portion of what we do, we have two things. We have AI, which I can talk about later, but Dan, to answer your question, how's the world responding? We've developed, and we'll be showing at the HLTH conference in Vegas, the H key. And the H key is allowing for personal agency over the records that you have. It's a federal law. It's also a big part of GDPR. It's a big part of the California Privacy Act. And folks need to have the ability to have access to their records, and then they decide. So what we've developed is something like, if you use the metaphor of a data vault, many people have, we're the safety deposit box inside. But different than Google or Facebook or anybody else, we don't claim your data. You do.
And what's been the response from your world?
What's interesting, it's been overwhelmingly positive, and we've kept this under, kind of stealth mode for a long time, but we've already received our first 5-year contract for a license, and it's significant. It's 7 figures. So per year for 5 years. So we think we've hit on something that's really resonating with people. That's the proof, right? If you can get the contract, that means somebody wants to buy what you've got. What's interesting is, I think, again, what Warren said, these portals, they aren't doing it. Doctors are not just quitting the profession. Physicians are killing themselves at the rate of more than 1 a day. That's screwed up. These are people committed to saving lives. They're taking their own lives out of this ridiculous requirement that they have an MBA on top of everything else they've done to figure out how to get paid.
That's wrong. The worst part. You actually get the MBA and you realize just how bad the whole system is and how poorly you're doing. So bang.
Yeah, I mean, that's it. Because you actually see it, you go like, there's no way out of this, right? And we're hoping that H-Key not only helps, the individuals receiving care, but the entire clinician layer. The other part of what we're building is a platform that goes vertical to allow all the horizontals to align. I'm sorry, horizontal to allow all the verticals to align. Yeah, I get nervous on camera. So, it's something that seems to be resonating. And the last thing I'll just say about our company, we incorporated as a public benefit corporation. That's a form of C Corp. We're out of Delaware, but it's not a nonprofit, it's a regular corporation. But the idea is we have standards and ethics and values inculcated in our DNA as a startup. And part of that is a partnertory approach. We're not predatory. And you cannot say that about Apple or Google or Facebook or Oracle or Epic or any of the other companies that are getting into healthcare. Our idea is, how can we help each other out?
So, and I just, as a quick aside, as we go through this, these discussions, if people have questions that they want to jump in with and interject, send me a note in the chat or raise your hand. Happy to jump out and field those questions in a more live setting. So don't hesitate.
Well, I think Jonathan from Oatmeal Health said something really well. He said most patients are not able to manage their own records. No kidding. Even if you translate the physician's information I can't understand it.
Mhm.
I've been told that, you know, about 20% of the PhDs on the planet can't understand their own healthcare. That's not our job, right? We just need to have access, and then you get it to the person that knows how to do it.
Mhm.
And I think Jonathan's right in that it's a, you know, you need to have some form of help, some form of concierge. Again, that's what our AI does. But I think that these are the things, Dan, that are pressing for a change. And what Warren talks about, and I'm sure the rest of the panel will be talking about, is it's not about incremental change. It is about quantum change across the board. And
Mhm.
that's what Health3 will really empower.
You know, Roger, when the CEO of Epic stands up in front of the Epic team of thousands of individuals and says, you share information, if they want our information, they're going to pay for it. That just says everything, you know, says everything.
That should be criminal, Warren.
It should be.
That should be that's an act of, if not terrorism, extreme extortion.
It is. It's complete extortion. And
It's 20th century and previous thinking. This colonized approach to owning your data is absolutely untenable, and it's untenable on a global scale.
So Aman,
I have no feeling about this.
Yeah,
Dan.
no, and you know, one of the things that we're trying to do is gather people who are passionate about you know, about this topic and what we're doing, and so it's always good to hear the both of you. And one of the things that we're, you know, one of our goals has been, and particularly from a Health 3.0 standpoint, is connecting the technology worlds and the technical worlds, and in particular, in this case, the blockchain world. So I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about, from your vantage point, having participated both on the healthcare side and the blockchain side, what do you see has to happen to kind of bridge some of those divides?
Sure. And I'm sitting here thinking whether I'm in an echo chamber here, because everything that these two gentlemen have said resonates so much with my past experiences, as well as some of the things we're doing in the healthcare space, that it's impossible to understand these issues from the outside, right? And and this is where I think people just don't understand that, as Warren was saying, EMRs are not the best friends, right? I mean, doctors spend so much of time putting information in the EMR just for compliance reasons, nothing else, right? And all of that time can actually go into looking at patients and people's needs, actual needs, right? And the thing is, EMRs were designed to solve yesterday's problems. They're not forward-looking, right? And yesterday's problems were, how do I maximize billing for everything that a person goes through in the doctor's office? That was the only problem they were trying to solve, not bring in information. They did not have an information-centric approach from the get-go. But here's the good news, though, right? And the good news is we don't have to live in that world anymore. There's radical changes happening even as we speak, where people are taking a lot of different steps to democratize that information. And at the risk of sounding a little bit cliched, that is the right word here, because your information should be yours, right? It should be transportable amongst wherever you want it to go, whatever systems you want to interoperate with, and whoever you want to have access that information, you should be able to give it to them, right? And this is where the good news starts coming in, is every time you actually go to a doctor's office, you're appending to your past record, right? You go in there today, you record something and it stays there. And then you go the next time, it's appended to all of your prior history. Now, philosophically, that is exactly what the blockchain does, right? It is an append-only medium of storing information. And you do it in a way that preserves the trust amongst all of your previous records, right? So if you bring in that perspective about how you look at healthcare data and how you look at blockchain, it all starts to now come together, and it starts to fit in very nicely as well. right? So, so that's the philosophical bearing of how you start to think about bringing these two apparently very diverse worlds to come together, right? Now, now when you say, how do you actually bridge these? I think there's 4 elements, right? 3 of them are very easily solvable. And by easy, anything easy in the healthcare space is still 5 to 10 years, right? So you've got to be persistent about putting those things in action. One is, the first pillar is technology, right? And the blockchain tech today itself allows you to create applications, whether you look at it from a patient or a person's perspective, whether you look at it from a doctor's and a billings perspective, whether you look at it from a clinical trials perspective, whether you want to bring in medical and pharmaceutical supply chains and guarantee their trust. You can put all of those things together today. But the point is, where do you start? How do you think about tackling a small system within a series of interconnected systems that form the entire ecosystem? Where do you start chipping away, right? If you can identify that the technology has a lot of potential. But the second thing is, along with the technology, what now comes is also a changing business model. So you've got to completely understand how bringing in blockchain technology is affecting your business. And that's a little bit of a trickier problem to solve, because it goes back to democratization of information. If Epic cannot hold on to the information and they cannot charge people every time that they want to transfer their records, how do they make money? They've got to figure it out, right? And that's why the violent opposition to democratizing data, because it's a let's face it, it's a cash cow for them, right? So that attitude has to change. So when you bring in new technology that is as disruptive as blockchain, you've got to reassess your business model. And the third thing, and this is a little bit trickier than the first two, is the regulatory side of it, right? So at least in the US, you've got to comply with HIPAA laws. You've got to comply with protected health information laws, right? PHIs. And when you start to do that, it obviously burdens the technology side of what you're trying to build. So it's kind of a feedback loop. So your tech in the blockchain has to clearly understand and provide value to the regulators as well, to say, okay, if there are elements of privacy in my information, how do we protect those? And that's, again, from an anonymity and a privacy perspective, that's easily doable. But again, you've got to build out the infrastructure and tech with that in mind. What is the hardest part to bridge these two different worlds is the people, right? And when I say people, it includes providers, it includes doctors, it includes the insurance companies, and ultimately it includes people like me who are on the receiving side of the healthcare system as patients, right? And what blockchain hasn't done so far is make it easy for people to start to adopt the technology by the billions and the billions, right? So that's where it has to come a little bit more user-friendly, come across in a more user-friendly way, where you can really take people's identity, for example, and make it secure, make it accessible by them without having to worry about, how you do it in the Web 2 world, which is username and password, or how you do it in the pure blockchain world, which is the private keys side of it, right? Both of those are not secure elements of managing the information or provide an easy, seamless way of interacting with your own information. And that's got to change. That's got to evolve over a period of time.
So it's interesting. One of the things that we've heard is at the end of the day, this regulatory component has to be addressed. And so I'm putting out an all call to this group. We are actively looking for some expertise on the regulatory side. So if anybody's out there who wants to participate that has that background or knows someone, please reach out. That it's a, it's usually not something that when people are talking about both the technology and the healthcare side, it's almost like a third leg that needs to be built on, to help support that stool, is this notion of how do you deal with all the regulatory and compliance issues that are, that are out there. So please, I'm issuing a plea.
So let's look for a second at this regulatory issue. Let's think about it and what it's actually cost. Right, the biggest innovation dollar-wise in healthcare was the HIPAA law. The HIPAA law came because we didn't understand how to send somebody's laboratory blood test from one office to another by fax. And trillions of dollars and concept and rigmarole of what happened as a result of that. Where could that money have been spent? So the reality is that if you had a cough, nobody in the actor terrorist world will probably be able to understand that you had a cough. But if you go to Home Depot or Lowe's and you leave your credit card, your life is completely over. We have spent billions and billions and billions of dollars to secure the concept that I have an elevated cholesterol, which I say freely and I take medicine for. All right. It's not changed healthcare. It hasn't made healthcare safer. It hasn't done anything. And it came out of the entire, a clearly good understanding of the world when HIV started. And we wanted to keep information about your life private. Look where we are now. Everybody take out your smartphone, all right? All of the medical data that you've put in, all of your privileged healthcare information is basically wide open here. There's no HIPAA on this. There hasn't been. There hasn't been for a long time. It was created that way. Any reasonable individual can go in right now and find out what your last weight was or when your last menstrual cycle was. And today, that can be a very, very, very dangerous concept. Apple's idea of putting women's ovulation on a device in certain states of the United States can be deadly right now. We are not better off. It's got to be a new system. So when you talk about regulatory, yes, there has to be privacy. But we've got to figure out a better way to do it than this issue that is not working right now. And I love you too, Roger, by the way.
No, that and again, one of the goals is to, HIPAA is a 20th century way of thinking, and I don't want to advocate throwing out any babies with any bathwater. However, there needs to be a 21st century approach to how we construct this. Pavan, I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about some of the factors you're seeing from just a pure business and adoption standpoint, and what are the biggest factors to both drive it and are part of an impediment.
I mean, there's a whole lot of stuff already said. So as Aman said, I don't want to repeat. But I just want to look back last 2.5, 3 years, what has happened during COVID. We have seen the entire system got shaken up, especially the healthcare system. The regulations were sort of softened. The way innovation drive happened to get different types of vaccines to face the COVID. I mean, they were all accelerated. And there were so many startups, mid-sized companies, large companies, which responded on different scale. Logistics were broken still. Every pocket of the world, it responded with its own industry coming to rescue the situation, right? And eventually, we all took shots of a vaccine, which was produced in a very short time with a limited trials, with no one really taking accountability or having a sort of a deeper understanding of long-term effects. So the point is, the system has every capability to respond, but the only challenge is the entire ecosystem is so well greased and well groomed that everybody is making money out of it. And the individual who is sort of supporting the entire ecosystem is a victim of the system. He doesn't he doesn't have a role to play. Nothing in the system is under his control. If he wants to survive and stay healthy, he has to comply, or he has to compromise, he has to be part of the system. So just to give you an example, I moved from Rochester to New Jersey, and I wanted to get a new physician, my primary physician. I went to him. So he says, like, I cannot get your access to your previous records. I said, I have it on my laptop, all the reports, would you like to take? He says, no, I don't need them. Maybe we'll repeat the tests. So the point is, I'm not blaming anyone here or sort of pointing fingers, but the point is, at least in Web 3.0, when these new technologies are emerging, we all would learn out of the COVID experience and this transformation on the web technologies to bring the individual to the center. But the challenge with the system is the system will not change, right? Everybody is making money. And without accountability, without ownership, right? Everybody makes money. Why would they change? Yeah. But it is for the individual to start defining the mandate now with Web 3.0. Obviously, it would need a lot of adoption of technology, but all of us started using smartphones. No one taught us how to use it. So healthcare is also a similar serious area an individual need to recognize. Today, we don't shy sharing on social network where we eat, what we buy, with whom we socialize, where we are dining tonight, where we are going on holiday. I mean, the biggest wrong word used in every individual's life is privacy, which is not defined by the individual, by somebody else. And we take it as a Bible to comply, of course, with limited choice, but still individual really need to start looking at how you would take control of his own health and his own life. Because today the watch we wear is collecting data. The implants are coming pretty soon. There is, whether we like it or not, we will have implants. Now the healthcare has gone online, whether we like it or not, everything is on the networks. Somebody is storing, somebody is streaming. So the point is, the way individual can gain control of the system with Web 3.0, that is where the whole things would get redefined. That's where the new business models will start coming in. And I think even individuals should start looking at how do I commercialize my data. It should be my privilege, right? So all of us talk about our health when we have a problem, right? If somebody has a cancer, he will talk to this entire world because you want to find a better cure, or you want to find an alternative, you want to find a solution. But why don't we look at it when we are, going through a certain manageable situations like diabetes, hypertension? Why not I talk about it? Why not I share my data for all those research studies and all? So there has to be a different shift in the mandate, the way individuals start looking into this data with Web 3. And I think that is something which would emerge. Obviously, any change would be driven by startups, some innovators, some disruptors. And I hope, and that's where I feel like, next decade, there will be a huge change where individual will start becoming the centerpiece of this whole ecosystem and start taking control of it.
So you're saying there's a status quo issue, which is always the case, and that it's a center of gravity shift back, to an individual perspective. What I'd like to do right now is shift gears into an audience asking panelists, and panelists can ask panelists mode. So if people have any questions, either for the general group or anyone in particular, please raise your hand. Or if any of our panelists have questions, either for the audience or amongst ourselves, let's open up the floor.
Can I ask a question?
Oh, sure.
So I want to first of all, congratulate Dr. Wexelman, because I think everything you said and Roger, you said really resonates so well. I was working with a company called Call Health out of India, and they basically have on-demand health services. And they just made a collaboration with Mayo and Cleveland Clinic to bring those heavy investors into India to take over the company. And they are basically looking from monetization perspective rather than patient or a human perspective. And that was so disturbing because obviously they were looking for financing, help to expand that. But it's such a very well designed model that I don't see being deployed here in the US. And that really has all the things that we talked about, from data, who owns the data, how to monetize the data in terms of one of the things that we are looking as a small team, especially from the diabetic foot infections perspective, is how do we help the patients to monetize upon their data, because these are the patients that are going for long-term care. And we're looking at monetizing the data by actually helping to learn what our device is doing, but also the physicians, how it's working, and then basically building that model for the physicians. So we're working with Lions Club International out of Vegas, and then we have second unit here in Marietta in Georgia. So we're building those small groups, but I would be really happy to collaborate with anybody on this, team here. And again, thanks to Uli for bringing all of these, smart minds of thinking alike as well, to help make this, because like you said, there is independent data sets of the same person not being utilized in the treatments, which is just totally doesn't give you the holistic review of the patient.
It's interesting that you talk about it. So many people have talked about the monetization of healthcare. Let's look at healthcare for a second, of what healthcare in the United States is and what it's always been. Person walks into a store. They're greeted by the owner of the store. And the owner says, "Let me tell you what you're going to buy." And then proceeds to give them all of these things. And then when the person goes to pay for it, goes to reach in their wallet or open their bag and pull out their purse and get it, the owner says, no, please, we don't work that way. It's all been taken care of. We'll see you next week. And you wonder why an organization that is bringing healthcare, we make a living. Of course we do. We make a great living. We used to make more. We don't now. The concept is that, monetizing healthcare doesn't have to be a problem. If we look at COVID and Pavan, what you said about COVID changed so much. But what did COVID do? COVID showed that when we get together and we take dreams and make them into reality, and we allow people to openly dream, think, and then make and do, we can save lives, we can do innovation, we can do all of these things in 5 months that normally it took 20 years to do. And we can do it right, we can do it well, and we can still make money while we do it. There's nothing wrong with that concept, but we've got to be able to give something back. And that's where we fall. We've fallen. For a company to say, look at the costs of electronic healthcare records today, which do nothing for your care. We've said that a million times. In all of the money that is made when for a hospital system like a Northwell in New York or a Mount Sinai or a Kaiser, it costs $1 billion to put in an Epic system. $1 billion, no questions asked. $1 billion. And besides, it never does the one feature that I think about at AlphaMed since day one, that I've been writing software about and creating applications with. It does nothing to make the decision process in the healthcare diagnosis and differential diagnosis. It does nothing to help the clinician, whatever level they are, come to a decision. It doesn't take, with the wealth of information that we have, with the wealth that is, Web 1, Web 2, Web 800, no software that we're using that is in use today is actually allowing the healthcare provider to make a quicker, more comprehensive, more cost-effective also diagnosis and list of differential diagnosis, but it stores information well. So our money is not even well spent. Our money's not well spent. COVID taught us that we have to take healthcare and take it out of this office that I have and bring it to the people, because the people can't always get to us. Remote patient monitoring. One of the biggest promises that we've had is so underutilized because it's bulky. And even that, it really isn't. But it's bulky and it's hard. And physicians don't want to do it. Mid-levels don't want to do it. So we can do both. We can provide amazing healthcare. We can use technology to make the world completely different healthcare-wise and disease management. All right. And we can still make money doing it ethically and morally, which is, I know, where Roger and his group are going. You know, so many people aren't, and they're always going to give the bad name to healthcare. They're always going to give this the bad name.
So there's a we have a question from Chris Pavlatos. I hope I pronounced that correctly. How long before blockchain is mature enough to handle the amount of data in healthcare? Do you think we will be dealing with a private or public blockchain in healthcare? Public blockchains provide more privacy and security. Maybe Aman, you can address that.
Yes, sure. I don't think data per se is a problem for the blockchains. A lot of the purists would prefer everything to be on a blockchain. And that's perhaps a little bit of a flawed approach to go when you're talking about terabytes and terabytes of information that's being generated every few hours, right? So maybe the storage of the data systems themselves can be delinked from the blockchain itself. And what you put on the blockchain is kind of like how you put the NFT records today on the blockchain, right? Or you can have a little bit more of an atomic version of it, where not everything is on the same record ledger of the blockchain, where you're wanting to have a high throughput of transactions, right? So data management can be handled completely separately from how the blockchain needs to be implemented. The point about public and private blockchains, I think the private blockchains have had their day in the sun. That was about 4 years ago. And nobody really talks about them anymore because, again, if you're starting to build walled gardens around blockchain technology, it's just not going to work. It is a flawed idea, and you have to go, when you start to think about transparency, you have to build in the public.
Yep, Aman, I have to jump up. What we say in our organization, I have to puppy pile on this because I 100% agree with you, and I'm really looking forward to our lunch coming up, because the reality of it is, Bucky Fuller said it years ago, don't try to fix a broken model, build a better model and let everybody come to you. And let's get real. The idea of fencing in blockchain is absurd. This is a quantum movement, and it's the kind of thing that the world needs right now. You know, it's no longer just who can afford healthcare and who can't. One of the things that COVID showed us and demonstrated is that we're all interconnected, and that your health and my health and the person who's living on the street's health are all interconnected. And so healthcare, I'm not going to talk about socialism of medicine or any of that stuff. All I'm going to say is humans are connected, and healthcare itself is disconnected. And it's operating on a model that's decades out of sync. But let's also look at change. When this thing came out, the first iPhone, people were like, oh, that's interesting. Now it's the predominant platform. Why? Because people flock to a new model. Was it the most brilliant invention in the history of humankind? No. Was it easy to use? Yes. Want to change healthcare? Make it easy to use. Dr. Barris said earlier, he goes, you know, the patient portal on Epic is easier than the doctor's portal. I'll go a step further. If you, no offense, Epic, please, when you look at this on YouTube, don't shoot me, but your Epic 3 doesn't work with your Epic 5, doesn't work with your Epic 7, doesn't work with your Epic 8. So not only is everything disjointed, but you can't even make your own systems talk to each other. And Microsoft was like this years ago, but it's not that way now. Companies like Epic can lead the way, but they've got to embrace the change that is different, that is 21st century thinking, that is 21st century monetization, if you will. It's not about colonization and stealing people's data. It's about respecting individuals and having them work together.
I think
The real challenge is who would define if my data is stolen? Is it you? Is it the system or myself? Who would define?
Your data is already stolen. Your
Let me-
data is
So-
already
Let me-
stolen.
So,
You have no privacy.
Let me bring a different concept. Let's move away from the semantics of stealing, right? Because it conjures a lot of different emotions. The idea is that the data has to be shared, and it has to be shared properly with the value accruing to the parties proportionally, right? So if it's your data, of course, you've got to share it with your provider. How else are you going to receive the care? You
so
cannot.
that's by my choice, right?
That has to be by your choice.
It should be by your choice.
right?
Yes,
and
it should be.
it should be under my control. If I go to provider X, I share. If I go to provider Y, I share.
Yes.
It should be under my control and my privilege, and I can go and publish on Facebook if I
If you
wish.
wanted to. Yes.
So that
The
should
problem
be.
with that, the problem with that is if we pick and choose who we share with, your data is not complete. It's not. It's just not. Right now, you know, when RIOs, regional healthcare information organizations, first came out about, I don't know, within the last 20 years, maybe 15 plus years ago, the concept was every time a patient had to go to a provider, they had to sign another consent so that they could have their information shared in the RIO, which should effectively give them better access and better healthcare. And they weren't. Or providers weren't asking. Nobody wanted data. Everybody's afraid where their data was going to go. If you can pick and choose who gets your data, the reality is I can't trust that. Because if you left out something about your health, and then you come to me and I'm given all your information about health, it's all the information that you decided is good. So you see, there's got to be sort of this all or nothing concept of what we're using and what we're sharing. Because if it's fractionated, it ain't going to work.
So
That's exactly
that is
where-
precisely where Web 3.0 comes in, as Aman explained earlier. So everything gets appended. So it's not that you'll be able to fragment it, and lot of significant. And another key aspect is also this notion that every system is a silo and unique is a misconception in a global world. So if you look into the populations across the world, the life expectancies in every part of the world have gone up. Medications, healthcares have worked in every part of the world. And also during COVID, we have seen there are multiple number of vaccines that got developed in different parts of the world, which are effective, which are as competent as any other things. But I think there is need for more democratization of healthcare processes, systems, approaches, knowledge, everything related with this globally, because now it's more silos and also more rigid and controlled. So I think Web 3.0 would to a large extent help. Again, if these data become accessible for research, for studies, for sort of interpretations, either by pharma companies or all those who are related with these ecosystems, there will be a dramatic shift which would benefit the entire humanity. It's not just pockets and parts of the world.
Yeah, and Pavan, you and I are, again, wild agreement as usual. I think the one thing I'd say is Tim Berners-Lee, the guy who invented the Wide Web, without a question, the inventor of that, has spent the last few years of his life trying to do exactly what we're talking about here. Whether his solution is the right solution or not is irrelevant. The point is, and he was very big on saying, there is no Web 1, there is no Web 2, there is no Web 3, it's all the web, blah, blah, blah. But what he's been saying lately for the last 5 or 6 years is, I did not anticipate the weaponization of the web in such a way that it would actually cause more disharmony in the world. And what we have to have is some form of integrity in the web to create more, ultimately, harmony in the world. This is probably one of the smartest technologies that ever lived. No doubt, right? It's obvious to all of us. And the only people that would be against this are people that are just trying to defend their turf. The reality of it is the shift has to happen. And I'm sorry to say this, folks, but I'm in my final act here. This is it. I want to leave the world better. And the only way to do that is to participate in this kind of thing. Because quite frankly, we are pretty close to an extinction event on a planetary basis. This is part of the solution.
Yeah.
We've all waited for the government to be the leader. It ain't going to happen.
It ain't going to happen.
It's just not going to happen. And that's why probably the people that are here on this panel, the people that are listening, on their own screens, you're going to be the ones that is going to make it for my grandchildren. The best I can hope to do is still try to provide the highest level of care I can under the present circumstances. But my grandchildren, they need to have a better world here. There has to be a better world. Government's not going to do it. The government can't we pray for primary, as physicians, we literally pray for a single provider, that being Medicare, because it's nothing else. They're just going to pay us. We don't have to work. Better idea isn't going to happen. All right. The reality here is it's got to change. The world is too complex. We nearly lost everything 3 years ago. And it'll happen again tomorrow. It's just waiting.
Yep.
Our lessons have not been learned yet. And if they haven't been learned with COVID, that's going to be the issue. Where are we going from here? It's got to change.
So I'm wondering if any of, given the audience that Uli has brought together, if any of our panelists have any questions for the audience, given the diverse nature and the expertise out there, what would you want to ask or say to the audience?
Yeah, I'll say a few things. Fellow developers, fellow entrepreneurs, fellow startup junkies. All right. What are you working on? All right. Everybody talks about cancer, 100%. Let's look at what cancer is right now. Cancer is becoming, thank God, a chronic disease that can be managed by amazing medicines. All right. I haven't heard one of you yet say, well, I think somebody came close with the concept of the teddy bear and the medication. I think that's really exciting. But
Dr. Bear.
Disease, yeah, the bear.
Dr. Bear's bear. It's Dr. Bear.
Bear.
Spelled like the aspirin, but his bear.
Well, aspirins are good if you take them correctly. What was I going to say? Atherosclerotic cardiovascular disease, heart disease, my world, is still killing more people on this planet than everything else combined. And if you look at it, it used to be very easy to raise money for the American Heart and the New York Heart Association. Everybody was giving money. But you can't do it anymore. Why? Because it's not exciting. My uncle had a heart attack. He was in the hospital 4 hours. He was discharged. He got a stent. Everybody's good. Heart disease is still killing more people on this planet than everything else put together. You have 75% of all patients who have congestive heart failure are dead in 5 years. Dead. You have a better chance of surviving localized pancreatic cancer than you do of filling up with water in your lungs and having fluid. You die in 5 years. So you guys that are out there sitting there thinking about where should we be spending our time? What should we be doing? Don't forget heart disease. Heart disease is the biggest killer. We need bigger and better. We do, even though we have plenty. We need bigger and better. That was a paid political announcement.
Coming from a cardiologist.
I approve this message.
I think one thought for all the audience, just Dan, on your question, I think it's a great need of the hour. There's so much of innovation out there. There are so many thoughts, so many ideas. I think the biggest challenge is bringing together or having a platform which could bring together these innovators, these disruptors, these great thinkers. The big challenge in startup ecosystems is no one is bringing a complete competency. What is 360-degree competencies? Somebody is perfect in technology, somebody is from a medical profession, someone else comes with some industry expertise. I think the biggest need is platforms like InnovatorMD, where you have a huge membership of professionals, medical professionals with long years of experience. And then we have a technologists who could partner them. And then we also have some of the health ecosystem, experts and professionals who could come together to build these things. Because, healthcare is not a easy area to build a startup or to make something really happen and, survive. I think there's a great need for such platforms, which are driven by medical professionals to bring together and build a ecosystem of disruption, innovation, where people get to meet each other and then, shorten their cycle of bringing or giving shape to the idea. I think that's the need of the hour, because if you go back into the ecosystem which exists today, I mean, you will simply be crawling, and someday, these innovators will get crushed. So we just need a complete different thinking and a platform also to nurture that thinking.
So we're coming near the end of our time. Are there any other questions from the group at large?
I just wanted to pick everybody's brains to understand. I know we talk about cardiovascular diseases, we talk about oncology. Everything is, different disease, different, pathologies. But at the end of the day, your body is one body. We kind of like make into these segments, which doesn't make any sense to me. I come from, I do practice myself Ayurvedic medicine, which is fundamentally based upon holistic view of the entire body. If something is wrong with your gut, it's going to impact something else in your body, right? When you look at that way holistically, because to me, what Dr. Wexelman said that, the next pandemic, something is coming, absolutely. But with all the development we have, with technologies we have robotic surgeries, and then we will die of a simple infection of a bacteria, right? So we are working on solving that one single problem, but I think it'll be very interesting to see how does everybody on this group here feel about the way we are addressing medical problems today outside of the data part of it, because we are, again, when you look at the data, it's not only just fragmented outside, but also the treatments are fragmented for the person. So it just doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah, can I say something, Dan, here?
Oh,
so,
sure.
Yeah, just on the topic, right? It's pretty interesting. Globally, if you look at it, you would find a lot of portals, websites, which are focused on diseases, certain type of people who are suffering from certain diseases. You could Google for people suffering from cancer or breast cancer. You'll see a huge groups there. When these people are suffering from that, they get together on those groups and they are exchanging ideas. So they're exchanging thoughts about alternate medicine, different lifestyle adaptations. There are different ways of, the processes, the things they are going through, the things they are trying, the effects of it and the outcomes of it. So there's a whole lot of thing happening out there when something is really impacting. So the thing is, it's rigid and a structured and a sort of completely barricaded ecosystem. You don't get to see that. But if you go out of the system into those countries, those parts of the world where it is a privilege to get some sort of specialized treatments and all that, you see there is a lot of flow of information and there is a lot of collaboration among all those who are going through these challenges. So, it's a different way and different approach in different parts of the world. Unfortunately, that's how it happens.
Mm-hmm.
That was one of the things that actually kept us going in the early days of COVID here in New York. We were getting information back channeled, social media, various user groups of physicians, patients, just sharing information, which, you know, I was able to actually change my software on COVID in the middle of the afternoon because I started hearing people talk about something called the loss of sense of taste and smell. It took the CDC 9 more weeks to actually get that up and there. But when you went to the groups and you were listening to the people, hearing the doctors talk about what worked and what didn't work, you know, the international concept, which eluded us during COVID, I would have thought the world would have come together as one. That's what the movies all told us, right? The minute the aliens invaded, everybody got together, there was peace and harmony, and we defeated the son of a gun. You know, and here we were dealing with the biggest healthcare catastrophe that the modern world has ever known, and we were still siloed, but not in the public sector. The public sector were talking. They were sharing ideas, they were sharing information, whether it worked or not. That's also, you're right, Baba. You're right 100%. That is going to help.
The interesting fact, Warren, is weeks before CDC realized what is happening in this country with COVID, there was a digital thermometer company, which was publishing the rising temperature levels being reported by patients, and nobody paid heed to that data. I mean, we had everything, but unfortunate thing is this system it was never part of the system.
Mm-hmm.
We literally got caught with our pants down.
Yeah.
We should be ashamed.
Quite literally.
We should be ashamed because we could have made big differences. There could have been, these number of people didn't have to die. But if anything came out of COVID, it's the sense that there were people who did stand up, who did think, who did act, who got together and said, we can make some changes here. And they did. So let's hope for the future.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did too. And I think communication fell apart because, you know, there was so much disinformation at the beginning of COVID and the data wasn't followed because the hearsay was. And my kids have heard it ad nauseum, and I apologize to the group for saying this, but truly it's unsocial media. It's not social media. And what hopefully is going to happen in what we're talking about here is a more understanding of how we can share and work together instead of apart. There's an old saying in the Fijian Islands, and it's, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And that principle is being used. Sorry, this does get political when you talk about the United Nations, but it is being used inside the United Nations right now. There's a little island in the middle of nowhere, well, thousands of islands, but you know, this is a country that is not the wealthiest country by far. Most of the citizens of this country can't afford shoes or education. Yet they come up with a concept like that. This is how we learn. We learn from each other. That's who the experts are. Government policy will help eventually. It's slow. We got to go out and make the change. That's why we're entrepreneurs. We got to go out and set the example. That's why we're doing what we're doing. And in my case, I'm in my third act. If I don't do it now, I'm never going to get it done. So, you know, I'm completely, pardon the language, hell bent to see this change occur during this watch. And I think, you know, Warren, we did learn a lot. I think a lot of the things we learned from COVID is under the covers. I think it's coming up. You look at the Great Resignation. Actually, it's a great determination to do things differently. And I really feel very positive and hopeful in the midst of all the darkness that we see.
So we're coming up near the end of our 90 minutes. I wanted to thank my compatriots here for the lively discussion, and Yuli for bringing this group together. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Yuli for any closing comments.
Great. Thank you very much, panel. Thank you, Dan. It's a real pleasure to listen to these comments and thoughts, because obviously, you know, we got to do something. When we started InnovatorMD, that was the idea. The idea was, you know, physicians or healthcare providers, you know, whether nurses, techs, you know, pharmacists, they see problems every day. They see what is not working. They can also come up with ideas like Warren is saying, you know, they can see what will work they come up with these ideas, they come up with solutions, but the problem is they don't have the platform, they don't have the voice. Nobody will listen to a lone voice, and they don't have the resources, and they don't have the education to be able to bring an idea forth, build a project, get the support of the community, get some interested parties together. And this is a great example of what you guys are doing, is getting people together with various skills and skill sets and different viewpoints coming together on one platform. That's exactly the mission of InnovatorMD is. So I'm very happy to see this panel and to see what we have discussed today. By the way, Warren, you were talking about cardiovascular disease. We have a solution for you. This is really good that I worked on. So let's connect afterwards.
Sounds great.
Yeah. So, I love this. I would like to, thank my team that has put this together. And also, I want to say, I want to support this as an organization and also as an individual. I want to support this, and I feel very enthused and excited about what this is going to, where this is going. One of the big factors is that the business model. That's where I think these ideas get stuck. You have to come up with a business model where it is beneficial to pursue this. Unless you do that, it won't move. And that's where I've seen many times where physicians or others come up with these brilliant ideas, but if they cannot figure out the business model, it won't go anywhere. And so that would be the charge for this group and whoever else is wanting to support this movement, is how do we create a business model where this can grow? And that's my advice to you guys and anybody else working on this. Create a business model where there'll be winners, whoever is participating in this ecosystem or in this plan. So with that, I want to thank you all.